hip hop has no color, but there's a lot of Asian people who are holding it down in America. Bro. Like, since we're a diverse country, like there's different like races that come together and they perform like their dance and the art and stuff. So
yeah, it is an art. B-boying is an art.
Phenomenon, bombing on stereo. We benefit from taking our time and waiting for the right scenario. Here we go. We about to make a permanent mark and rip the toughest mental fabric apart because we're done playing with these puzzle pieces and parts to make a complete dart. Let's start. All my money making MCs and fallen role scholars who might have lost their life.
It was big at one point, and then it didn't die away. People think it kind of did, but what happened was it wasn't as mainstream then. But now, because of all the different dance TV shows and because it's becoming mainstream again, then you hear about it more. So it's not so much that it's changed, more that it's become more, public.
The circles, right? Yeah, they're called ciphers, and what you do is like you just wait for a moment where you can go in. Like usually the people that go in frequently are like they're hungry, they want to dance and stuff. Yeah. And the circle is like the way for b-boys to like network with each other, They show what they got.
Step up in the cypher if you like sunbathing. Yeah, it's right here. It's right here. It's right here. Yo, how you gonna see us standing way over there, getting beat upside the cranium with these solar flares? Yeah, it's right here. It's right here. It's right here. Drop a devastating verse that you can't compare. We're about to make the whole public aware because we bring you the fastest growing phenomenon, bombing on stereo.
I'm hearing a lot of hype from Atlanta. A lot of people are saying Atlanta's where it's at nowadays, but Atlanta's actually a new scene. It's coming up, and h.b.o is helping it build up and form. There's Koreans in Korea and there's Koreans in America, and the hip hop's everywhere. It's worldwide. So there's Koreans in Korea who break. There's Koreans American that are in America that break. So it's you'll see a difference. Maybe their style might be different, but it might be more accepted over here than over there. So.
The atmosphere, I like the unity, because it brings people together. It's recreational. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And the competition level is what makes it fun, because they're always trying to best the other person,
It's definitely big over there. You could turn on the TV literally and wait 5 minutes, and you'll just wait for something to come up. And a b-boy will probably come up in a commercial or something.
It's kind of what I call the trickle-down effect. Japan being the most eastern, with Korea and then China. So I would say 10 years ago, Japan went through the same thing, and Japanese Americans did the same thing, and now it happens to be a really big trend in Korea. 5 years from now, we could have the same conversation about the Chinese Americans.
Korean people tend to be very competitive. Korean people, there's a reason for the model minority stereotype, just because when Korean people tend to do something, they tend not to half-ass it.
Unofficially, Atlanta is the fastest growing Korean American community, based on those two sources of population influx, directly from Korea and coming from other larger cities to Atlanta. So I think compared to most U.S. metropolitan areas, Atlanta is probably one of the largest Korean communities in the U.S., probably actually in the world outside of Korea. In Atlanta, the 2000 census is actually officially has us at between 70 to 80,000, but the Korean American Association numbers are closer to 100,000. Not only with Korean Americans, but with any immigrant population. The first generation applies to the actual immigrants. So typically here in Atlanta, it would be my parents' generation, our parents' generation. That first wave of immigrants who actually came from their respective country to the U.S. And the second generation is referred to as the American-born children of the first generations. The first generation, when they came from Korea back in the 60s and 70s, Korea was a very despondent, poor, traditional country. And like my parents' generation, like when they left Korea and came to the U.S., they only had the image of Korea from the 60s and 70s. I think Korean parents in Korea now are much more liberal than Korean American parents are here in the U.S. because my parents haven't been back to Korea in 30 years, and they only know how they grew up.
There are a few things that I can say are conflicting, like my appearance, namely the hat.
Yeah.
Traditional Korean people aren't too fond about it. Baggy clothes, all that stuff. I hear a lot of stuff about that from Korean people, but then for me, very American, second generation look on life is like, it's my life, my body. I'll do it how I want. But that's very non-traditional Korean.
Generally, I think there's a little bit of a gap. I mean, certainly there's varying experiences. I mean, I got friends who are tremendously close to their parents. I feel fortunate enough that I'm close to my parents and I work with them, but sadly that's not always the case. I do think that generally speaking, there's probably a bit more of a gap than you would expect. Probably because of culture, because of language. Also, the first generation, we have to understand the second generation. The first generation worked extremely hard. I mean, all they know is work because it was feast or famine for them. I mean, they either came here and made it or they didn't make it, and there was no one that was going to help them. There was no government assistance for them. That's the life of an immigrant.
They're so focused on the child's future. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you got to make it. You got to have a better job than we got. Because we had to come all the way to America from Korea. You know what I'm saying? So why are you gonna waste your life? And that's their viewpoint.
First generation is always working, and because that's all they know. I think there is a definite culture, language, and some sense of professional gap between the generations.
My parents are from Korea. You know what I'm saying? Well, my mom is, and my stepfather, who is my father now, he's also from Korea. And so, I was raised in America. I was actually born in America too, but I was raised strictly Korean. And so when I picked up breaking, when I started getting down with hip hop for real, they were looking down on it.
I've tried to put onto my parents, stop focusing so much on how I look. My mom will stop me when I'm going out the house with ripped up pants. She'll tell me to change.
And some Korean parents that I know, they're just they'll go over the top. They'll kick their kids out, for just breaking, for dating a guy that's older than them. You know what I'm saying?
The stereotypes of Korean Americans are the fact that they're all good students. They all go to Ivy League colleges. They all get high-paying professional jobs in the medical, legal, business fields. And I think that's part of the culture. I think there is a tremendous amount of expectation that comes from the first generation on the second generation, and there's a tremendous amount of hope.
So that's what they try to get their children to focus on, rather than your hobbies. They think this is a hobby, but it really isn't. You know what I mean? Anyone who thinks that way, they ain't doing it for real. It's like this is the lifestyle, this is the culture that we live, and that we keep alive.
My dad's from the countryside of Korea, around the 38th parallel, and my mom's from Seoul, in the capital. They're always pushing me to get better grades, and sometimes they take it kind of far, but it's all for me, so I understand where they're coming from.
Education is seen as the silver bullet. I mean, that's the key to everything. Is it the answer to all your problems? No. Just because you have a college degree doesn't mean that you're gonna be a millionaire and live a comfortable life. But that's the starting point. That's the key. If you want to level the playing field for Koreans, they feel that education is the most important thing.
Even if they come to America and they pick up breaking, they come out to the jams and everything, it doesn't make them more Americanized, so to speak. But they try to get integrated into the American culture. Coming into hip hop isn't really integrating them into an American culture. It's integrating them into hip hop culture.
First of all, I gotta keep it live until the curtain call. Definitely got to show my ethic when there's work involved. The second that I shower skeptics with my dialogue is when the third rock will ignite like a fire log and burn steadily from night to morn and bring forth enough heat to keep your earthlings warm. Sip a fifth on the 6th day for stress relief and catch it right before you drift into deep REM sleep. It's the dream merchant, selling everything from lucid nightmares to fantastic flashbacks to classic recollections.
Jam that we throw every year on this exact day is called Loose Screws. This is number 11. It's
In
the
Atlanta
biggest.
is the biggest
It's
one.
the biggest jam in Atlanta,
But it's getting bigger
yeah,
every
it's
year.
getting bigger every year.
The water's here, the party's here, upstairs, downstairs. Y'all ready to